It's USC and UCLA, a special crosstown edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. The best and worst memories of the Trojans and Bruins rivalry. Will Saturday's city championship game be a Coliseum sellout? A preview of the 91st meeting of the Trojans and the Bruins. The latest on the Trojans head coaching search and our Pac-12 weekly predictions. Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to a special edition of We Are SC's Inside the Trojans Huddle. It's week 12, which means it's USC versus UCLA rivalry week. Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion with We Are SC columnists, and staff writers. Let's get into the pregame show, which is where we introduce our panel members of this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and a little something extra now. We're going to give you the latest USC Trojans football news. First, let's meet this week's panelists. Mark Culkin, We Are SC columnist who writes Monday's Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday's Takeaways, in addition to practice reports. Former all-conference linebacker Kevin Bruce and team captain for the 1975 USC Trojans, We Are SC columnist who writes defensively and offensively speaking after every USC game. And I'm Greg Katz, your host, moderator, and We Are SC columnist who writes the obvious and not so obvious, and I am MHO Sunday. So here's the latest USC football news. Trojans wide receiver Drake London was named one of 10 semifinalists for the Bolitnikoff Award, which is given to the nation's top receiver. The recruiting class of 2022 five-star corner Dominique Jackson from Santa Ana, California, modern day, has decommitted from USC to explore further options. The BYU game, the Trojans' final home game on November 27th, will kick off at 7:30 p.m. and will be seen on ESPN. And in what could affect the Trojans' search for a new head coach candidate, over the weekend, Washington fired its head coach, Jimmy Lake, for his recent sideline shoving of one of his players as viewed on national television. One rumored candidate for the opening is Oregon State coach Jonathan Smith, but we'll take that rumor for what it's worth. So there you have the latest up-to-date headlines as of our taping of the show. All right, it's the first quarter. This Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. is the 91st meeting of the crosstown rivalry between USC and UCLA. Nowhere in America do you have two big-time sports universities in a major city literally 12 miles apart. USC leads the series 50-32, and there have been 7 ties. So let's start off on a positive note, shall we? Let's start off with your best memory of the USC-UCLA rivalry. We have a unique perspective in Kevin Bruce, who actually played in, I think, at least 3 of them, perhaps maybe it was 4 during his days of playing against the Bruins. So Kevin, what's it like to be a player in the USC-UCLA rivalry? And then tell me what your best memory is.
Yeah, and it was 4 games. You're right on that regard. So it was a time well spent. Let's put it that way. From a memory perspective, there's the memories of those 4 games, and also there's later on memories as well. And I think the most interesting of all of the above was some in-game memories. There's really 2 that stand out in my mind. One was as a sophomore for me. When we were playing UCLA, and this was before they had to reinstate the home jerseys situation, and it was just the way we played the game because we were both teams had the home field as the LA Coliseum. Well, anyway, so the UCLA had the dynamic duo from Pasadena and running backs with
James McAllister and Kermit Johnson.
Exactly so. And the quarterback was Mark Harmon. And a very fond memory of me was playing inside linebacker and Mark Harmon trying to run the veer option with 2 of the very fastest running backs in the conference at that time. and I'm not sure how many first downs they made. Not a lot of points. I know that for a fact, but Mark Harmon, it turned out to be a much better television actor than he did as a beer option quarterback. God bless him for that. And I had one vivid memory of me actually running backwards, making a tackle against him. So he offset the speed that the other two backs had. But God bless him for being out there. But we made sure that UCLA didn't have a great day. And during those 4 games, 3 of those were victories. And I have some memories of my senior year, which was be a bit long for this format. But at some future time, I can review some of what went on in that game. It was fascinating, frankly, I have to tell you, from a football perspective.
Now, just so for those that are watching this video, in the background, Kevin has a picture of action on the field at game level, and I'm going to let you describe it, Kevin. So tell our viewers about it, and those of you that are on the podcast, we hope the description will be good enough that you can visualize it.
Well, you have both teams in their home colors against each other, and you have a USC defensive tackle, rushing the UCLA quarterback. Quarterback was Mike Sciarra, and the USC defensive tackle that was was rushing Sciarra at that time was Gary Jeter, and I was somewhere off the picture here. Probably in coverage, that would be my guess, since I played linebacker. And it's a great picture because this is what Sciarra had to put up with. And I don't know if Gary got his hands on the pass, because it's a pass rush situation. My guess is that if he didn't, he was awfully close to it. You could tell right there that Sciarra's throwing the ball, frankly, probably a little bit before he's ready. He's not stepping into the pass at all. So that's what's going on there.
It's very interesting. Gary Jeter, of course, was a prize recruit. I met him the day he came onto campus at USC. He was out of Cleveland, Ohio. His high school actually doesn't exist any longer, and unfortunately, Gary did pass away a few years ago. It was really a painful loss. But I remember shaking his hand the first time, and he's supposed to be 18 years old, supposed to be. And I thought he was going to just absolutely crush my hand. It was unbelievable. And one of the great stories was that Woody Hayes, of course, who was the head legendary coach at Ohio State, thought he owned the state of Ohio. And he was so upset at John McKay and his staff that Gary would sign to leave the beloved Ringe Latin High School of Cleveland, Ohio, and end up in Southern California. He never, ever got over it. I talked to some people from Ohio State, and they said he just would go ballistic if you brought it up. And obviously you didn't want to bring that up to Woody Hayes, but one of the great recruiting coups for USC in its history. All right, speaking of history, let's go over to Mark. Mark, your most positive memory of the USC-UCLA rivalry?
I'll be happy to relinquish my time if Kevin will just keep telling us stories. So, I mean, I'm fine with that. But so I only get to pick one.
No, you can pick 2. You've been a good boy so far.
Okay, awesome. So I actually have a few, but I'll run through them really quickly. My very first lucid, vivid memory is probably also my favorite. I was 10 years old, 1977. Frank Jordan kicks the game-winning field goal. Yeah, that was fun. That was actually my first game I actually attended as well.
Cool.
So that's probably why I remember it so well. Also, a little footnote to that game, if people don't remember, UCLA had to, I think, vacate all their wins that year. They ended up 0-11 at the end of the season. They used a whole bunch of ineligible players that season. But I think my most sentimental favorite moment, only because of what he went through to come back and play for USC, was Antoine Simmons, the pick 6 he had between his legs. Well, actually, between Brian Poley Dixon's legs. I think he's still looking for the ball. If people don't remember Antoine Simmons, he was a cornerback safety for USC. Came down, what was it, stomach cancer or something? He was diagnosed with something. He literally almost died on the operating table, worked himself back, was able to play in this game. USC shut out UCLA 27-0. And yeah, so those are just a couple of my favorite memories. You know, obviously you have 2011, 50-0. You had the Skippy Neuheisel timeout game in 2009. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. There's more good than bad in this series.
No doubt about it. And I will tell you, it's amazing how some of these USC UCLA games just stick in your head no matter what age you are. I assume I'm the oldest of the group here. And when I was 15 years old, from the positive memories, I should add, like Mark, I've got a couple of them that were just absolutely, to me, singed into my brain. And they were in when I was a teenager. In 1965, I was 15 years old, and I had gone with my dad, and we were watching the game at the Coliseum in 65, and USC was just going up and down the field. And, you know, it just was going to be SC's day. I mean, Garrett was just top form, fumbled a couple of times, which kind of was like foreshadowing of not so good things to come. But the memory in my brain is the last 6-7 minutes of the game. SC was up in double digits, and, you know, everybody's saying, boy, Mike Garrett's going to get to the Rose Bowl. How cool is that? And everybody's exciting. And then there was a little sophomore quarterback from Redwood City in Northern California named Gary Beeben. And he cranks up and he just heaves it. I mean, he just cranked it up and throws a touchdown pass to Dick Witcher. And it was like, not a good thing, right? And so he said, well, he's not going to do that again in the same, you know, within 5 minutes or 4 minutes. And, you know, he went back to pass again and he heaved it. And USC had an All-America defensive back named Nate Shaw. And somehow, some way, Kurt Altenberg got behind him. The pass was beautifully thrown to the closed end of the Coliseum and perfectly thrown to Altenberg in the end zone. And that was all she wrote. I was absolutely crushed. I could not believe in a span of 3 or 4 minutes, the whole game had changed. I mean, that was devastating to me, and I've never forgotten that. In fact, I must be a masochist. I go on YouTube and watch the same thing to see if it really happened. The other one that I'll bring up was 1969. USC was playing UCLA, and Jimmy Jones was the quarterback.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Jones couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if he walked up a foot away and tried to hit it. And he did it the entire game for the most part. It was a defensive struggle. The Wild Bunch were just incredibly good. But it went down to the final inside of a minute or thereabouts. And it looked like SC was going to lose the game. And then Jimmy Jones dropped back and threw to the closed end of the Coliseum to Sam Dickerson deep in the end zone. It's a touchdown in the corner, the coffin corner, that is still debated today. It would be interesting to see with replay and everything they have, how that call might have turned out in today's world. But it was as controversial as you can get. What made it really controversial is the play before that, a guy named Danny Graham, who was a defensive back for UCLA, was called for pass interference, which was really debatable because the ball was way over the head of the receiver for USC. So it gave Jimmy Jones one extra play. That's all he needed. And I'll tell you, in those days, that's when the Coliseum was the home place for both SC and UCLA. And it was divided like a bagel cut in half. It was like unbelievable intensity. And, you know, that was just, you know, an incredible memory for me, positive. But I would think that I will say here, the best memory for me amongst and I've mentioned one of the negative ones, which I should have saved to the second quarter, but the biggest memory for me was without a doubt the 1967 game when I was 17 years old and watched O.J. Simpson run 23 blast, and he ran it towards me where I was sitting on the open end by the peristyle end. And, I didn't realize it until I saw replays of the game that UCLA really dominated USC for the first three quarters.
Yep.
My heart said they didn't dominate it, but boy,
No,
when I
they
watched
did.
the video, they
did,
Kevin.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was bad. It was really bad. Had not, I think it was Pat Cashman stepped in and made a pick six in the first quarter, SC would have been in real bad shape. And then, there it was in the fourth quarter. I mean, one of the great plays that gets misread in that game was the 13-yard run that Simpson had, in which he literally had no blocking and took a delayed draw, and he went through 5, 6, 7 tacklers. In fact, I got a picture behind me. I don't know if you can see it. It's a painting. There it is for those of you that are watching, of Simpson doing that 13-yard run, which was incredible. Tommy Prothero, the coach of UCLA, said he's never seen anything like it. But the 64-yard touchdown run, I'll never forget watching it on replay and on YouTube, listening to Chris Schenkel, who was doing the game for ABC, going, "Whoa, look at that guy go." And then Bud Wilkinson, the legendary coach, is doing the color, and he says, "Chris, I don't think we've ever seen a lad run like that. He is one of the greatest of all time." And, that is, I could watch that play, honestly, for 5 straight minutes over and over, just watching the blocking of Steve Lamer and Danny Scott, the fullback.
Right.
So I know I'm belaboring this, but it was a great, great moment. It's the best SC UCLA game I've ever seen in my life because of everything that was at stake, the Rose Bowl, the conference title, a national championship. It was the best of the best. So I'll just leave it at that. And boy, those were entertaining memories, weren't they? All right, so let's go to the second quarter. The not so good. I've already mentioned the Altenburg and Witcher disaster. I'll kind of start off this since I mentioned it. Probably the other one that really bugs me, was about 2 years later in 1966. UCLA lost Beeben, and he couldn't quarterback, and they brought in this guy who knew, Norman Dow. And Norman Dow takes UCLA to an upset victory over USC. It was stunning. And I'll never forget it. They had a wingback, I think his name was Cornell Champion. And he takes this inside slot or wingback reverse, and it just was beautifully run. But to think that USC was as strong as they were, and Norman Dow, you talk about John Barnes later on doing what he did for UCLA. The Norman Dow thing is like, that can't have happened, did it? So I would say that's probably, right behind the Gary Beeben, Witcher, and Altenburg passes. But Mark, why don't we go in a little bit reverse order here? Why don't you tell us your most, call it whatever you want, negative UCLA upset, win, what have you?
Yeah, well, you already segued right into it. You mentioned the name John Barnes. That one, nobody knew who this guy was. He was just some dude who transferred from UC Santa Barbara because their football program was shut down. He literally was just a backup quarter. I think he was like the third, fourth string quarterback on that team. And what did he do? He just, USC, I think we're leading by 31, 31-17 heading into that fourth quarter. And just a total collapse. That one stuck out. That was back in 1992. That's how far back, it goes with UCSB not having a football program. But I think the one that probably stung the most, hurt the most, because it was supposed to be the easiest victory at the end of the year of a 4-game series that USC was playing. 13-9. I don't even need to say the year. Just 13-9. Eric McNeil, you can ask him to do that. If you asked Eric McNeil to do that 10 times, he'd be lucky to do it once.
Now tell our viewers or listeners who Eric McNeil was, so they
He
have
was the hybrid safety linebacker
right.
that tipped the ball from JD Booty, as near the line of scrimmage, and then intercepted the ball before it hit the ground. Game over. Yeah, it basically kept USC from going to the national championship game. Again, I have to make sure everybody understood that. Again.
Righto. All right, Kevin. What do you got? I think I know where you're going to go, but tell me.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Things happen. But my memory was actually my senior year, and we were, in the Coliseum, and things were just. We had a very good defense that year. Our offense was pretty rocky, with new quarterback Vince Evans, and Ricky Bell at running back was not a bad option, frankly. But we had a hard time putting points on the board, and we'd gone through 3 straight losses, generally close games, and so anyway, the UCLA game was a bit of a redemption element, and if we had won the game, we were going to go to the Cotton Bowl, and we had been told that I was in Dallas, which is now where I live, ironically. But anyway, so game's going on, and we're going through the first quarter. UCLA's moving the ball; they're converting on third downs, and just making some really good plays, and they're hitting us in areas where it was the weak spot of certain kinds of defenses that we were doing. We were moving around, we were adjusting and stemming into different formations and different coverages in the secondary and so on. And it just seemed like they were just always picking the right play at the right time against our wrong defense, and it was frustrating to me because we were better than that. And I just see, wow, man, these guys are really well coached up, and, things are going through my mind trying to figure it out. And then I noticed, that's probably midway through the second quarter. I noticed that UCLA is running in a player really late in the offensive cycle, right? There's probably at that time, I think they had 30 seconds, maybe, I think it was, to run a play, maybe 35. I can't remember exactly which, but whatever. It was maybe no more than 10 seconds ago, and they'd run somebody in real late, and then they would turn around and run back out. And at that time, you could do that. You still can. I don't recall, but you could run a play in and the guy could run out, right? You didn't really have to do a substitute. And I noticed it. And I went, oh, that's odd, So we had they ran their play and whatever happened. And a play or two later, they called the exact perfect play, and it was an audible. I could hear it at the line of scrimmage in the formation that the defense we were playing, and they converted like a 3rd and 12, or it was silly. It was just wasn't right. It didn't fit how typically we would play it. And then it dawned on me, I go, you know what? They've got our signals, and that's why they're running the guy in late. They're bringing in the plays that are 1 or 2 different plays that are best suited against a particular type of defense, because late in the season, there's not a lot of secrets left, right? You expose the kind of defense you're going to run, the formations, the stunts, and so forth, right? Same with the offense. You kind of know what people are going to be doing. When they're going to do it is always a question. And it occurred to me, I said, those guys got our signals, because what would happen is a defensive signal will come in from the sideline through a series of signs, much like in baseball, where you have people, skin on skin, rub the arm and spit and do all that kind of stuff. Well, we had a very similar thing. You see it to this day. It's a lot more complicated now. People are always covering their mouths and all that. Anyway, so I came to the signs. I told Coach McKay and Coach Levy, I said, they've got our signals. And they looked at me like, really? And I said, no, Coach, they have our signals. They're running guys in. They're doing this. They're doing that. And he said, fine, whatever. He told Coach Levy, hey, what I want you to do is run our guys in with the defensive calls, right? So we were running a 50 stack and a different kind of secondary coverage with both man and zone cover. And so we started doing that. UCLA scored 3 more points the rest of the game. And regrettably, the negative part of that memory is that we lost the game 25-22. And it's just we just didn't quite have enough points on the board, but we were able to really stymie the rest of the game for UCLA by being able to run a defense that they weren't ready for. So later on, within a few weeks later, I was at a speaking engagement and Coach Donahue was there. And I said, hey, you guys stole our signals. And he said, we never, ever stole your signals. I said, let me tell you what, you may not know that you stole your signals, but I sure know that you stole our signals in that game. And they cannot convince me to this day because I know what happened out there. And if I had only been a little bit more on the ball, maybe catch that a little earlier on, maybe 7-point difference would have been, or just a field goal, we could have, may have had a different outcome. But anyway, that was a interesting memory. Glad to share it. Regrettably, we didn't win the game, and we didn't go to the Cotton Bowl. We went to the Liberty Bowl.
Let me ask you a question.
Not the same.
Let me ask you a question, Kevin. I'm sure that Mark will appreciate your answer along with everybody else. When you're on the field for the USC UCLA game, how much talking is going on between one side to the other?
Wow, there's not a lot of it's not a debate squad out there. I mean, it is, there's some communication going back and forth, but it's mostly about parental heritage and other, physiological kinds of things in terms of team to team. Now, within our own setup, there's a lot of communication that goes on. You don't have a lot of time. You're not going to, carry on a conversation, but you got to get something communicated very, very quickly. And so when you have veterans on the team, it doesn't matter whether they're sophomores or seniors, if they played a lot of football and we know exactly what we're trying to do, it's much easier to communicate very quickly, what's going on. Between teams, look, it was the same. Notre Dame, Ohio State, UCLA, it was just nasty time. I mean, the verbal was the least nasty, okay? Trust me. It was the punching and the jabbing and the poking in the eye and then the bad talk that was always part of those games. Still is, I'm sure. Some things don't change. I'm sure that's part of it.
I brought up, Rick Neuheisel calling that late timeout for no reason other than to prolong the game. When you were playing, Kevin, what was probably the most controversial thing USC did to UCLA to kind of rub salt in the wound, so to speak?
Well, it's actually a really good question. And I don't recall a salt in the wound kind of issue. I know that it was just always, every play was going to be an opportunity to take somebody out. I hate to say it that way, but, take somebody out. I do remember very vividly my freshman year, we were running a corner blitz. We didn't run a lot of corner blitzes, but we were going to run a corner blitz against Harmon, I think it was, whoever the quarterback was. This is 72. And so unfortunately, what we did is that we all, the defense, anyway, we all knew what was coming. So we all stood up. I wasn't starting at the time. So we stood up and, moved to the sideline because we wanted to see this like explosion take place. And it was Charlie Hinton. And he just blew up the quarterback. I don't know what it was. And I have a fond memory of that. I don't know if that's, one of those nasty, rub the salt in the wound, but it was certainly enjoyable. We knew it was coming. We were well ahead at the time. It was like one of those, we can do a corner blitz. Why not? It might help the program out and do our recruiting a good bit of service as well. So that's, that was that kind. But Coach McKay was very interesting about those situations. If he had an opportunity to play younger players that didn't have they weren't starters, he would take that time to do that. Or seniors who this was their last season, last year, and in some respects this is going to be the last regular season game. Usually it was. He would get them on the field. So, instead of, rubbing it in and pounding it out 50-0 kind of situation, he would get guys out in the field and then you had no idea what was going to happen next. I mean, I remember playing against Ohio State, and I'll shut up, but get Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, we were well ahead. And I'm talking to guys that were actually offensive players that were playing defense. So I had to tell them where to line up and do all this kind of stuff. And I was at that time, an 18-year-old freshman linebacker telling these guys where to go line up and this wide receiver is playing cornerback now. It's all kind of crazy stuff. So, but it was a good trait of coach was to get guys out there, let me get us some opportunities to play, have some memories themselves.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go into halftime. And I am going to expand it just a bit because I think the conversation is really, I think, fascinating for all of us and hopefully for our viewers and our listeners. One of the questions I had was, will the SC UCLA game be a sellout for this year? But I'm going to preclude that with a question for both of you. What is and I think I know the answer, and if I don't get the answer I want, I'm going to be disappointed, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is the biggest hit you have ever seen in a USC UCLA game? So I'll give you 2 seconds to think about that.
Yeah, that's easy. That's Ray. I mean, come on.
Oh, wait, whoa.
Oh,
it's very interesting. I'm going to come up with a different one, but I'll tell you what. We'll go, Kevin. Your biggest hit.
Okay.
And
then
we'll go to Mark.
The one I saw was Ray hitting whoever the quarterback was. The fact that he got up and continued to play was amazing to me. And it turned out that he has no memory of the rest of the game. So, oops. But he played well, I have to say. But that was just, and he got a penalty on it too. That was kind of a bummer. But that was a great hit against in that particular game.
A tremendous sideline. Mark, what do you think? You agree?
Yeah. That was that one is the only one that really just pops in my head since you only gave us 2 seconds to think about it.
Yeah.
And the quarterback's last name was Pat Cowan, I believe.
Pat Cowan, yeah, you're
correct.
Yeah.
So that was just a violent hit. And what was astonishing was the kid popped right up.
Yep.
I mean, he got right up like it was no big deal. I don't know if that's adrenaline or what, but man, that thing was coming right at you on the TV too.
Yeah.
So, hat tip to the young man who got up from that hit.
I agree.
That is a YouTube favorite, no doubt about it. All right, well, I'm going to pop in with mine, although I have to say that you could probably rank them close to being on the same level. But for me, it was a hit that Charlie Weaver put on Dennis Dummett in the 69 game. That was like, you got to be kidding me type of hit. Where Dummett was rolling out, decided for some ridiculous reason he's going to come forward. And Charlie Weaver, let me tell you, what a stud. What a stud. And he came up and hit Dennis Dummett head on. I'd seen Dennis Dummett when he played quarterback at Long Beach Wilson High School because my high school had played Long Beach Wilson. And in those days, Long Beach Wilson was a big power in CIF football in Southern California. But this collision knocked Dennis Dummett into the air. It looked like 5 yards. And it was like, how did he get up? I mean, what we should do is get Cowan and Dummett to sit down for lunch and compare notes because the hit by Weaver was like, is like
he was airborne.
Wild.
Dummett was airborne.
He was airborne.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't serve lunch as he was in the air or something.
Yeah.
But it was, for those of you that are listening or care to watch afterwards, go to YouTube and look up Dennis Dummett being hit by Charlie Weaver. Of course, Charlie Weaver, one of the famous members of the bunch. And boy, I tell you, if you ask people what was the Wild Bunch like, you just say, go look at Charlie Weaver's hit. That'll tell you all you really need to know. But all right, let's move on to the present for halftime. I think the attendance at the Coliseum. Do you think it'll be a sellout? Kevin, you're going to be in Dallas, I assume, watching the game. What is your expectations of the crowd?
Well, we didn't have a sellout since Pete Carroll days, for that matter. So I don't expect to see one this time either. So no, I don't expect to see a sellout. It would be nice to get a good turnout. I think the game time, kickoff time is actually favorable for a good crowd. But we'll see. I hope that it's a great, crowd that goes to the game. I hope the game itself is a good game, competitive and entertaining as all get out. So it would be nice because it'll obviously be televised as well.
Okay, now Mark, I know that you've been a member of watching these games for a while now, and you've got to have a pretty good pulse of how fans are feeling, at least on the USC side. What is your expectations for the attendance?
It won't be sold out. They might, claim 70,000 tickets sold, but I think it should be the largest crowd of the season. So I'm anticipating, 60,000, 62,000, somewhere around there. I'm just hoping that it's not tilting blue more than cardinal as far as the color scheme is concerned. So yeah, 1:00 kickoff, as Kevin mentioned, so that's favorable. But it's interesting. USC fans have been showing up all season. They didn't show up to homecoming. All of a sudden, they're going to show up to this game. It'll be interesting to see which color is more prevalent in the stands. I got to be honest with you. I'm really curious.
Well, I'll tell you, my perspective on it is I've been to the games when nothing is on the line. And really, there is really nothing on the line except for the fact, UCLA is bowl eligible now. USC is hoping to be bowl eligible. But I agree with Mark on this point. They haven't been showing up all season. And I know the pride of USC football fans. It's through the roof. And the last thing they want to think is they're going to have to sit in their own Coliseum and watch their team get waxed by UCLA. I don't think they want to be there in person to see it. I'm not telling people stay away by any stretch of the imagination. I used to always go no matter what was at stake. I mean, it's a lot more fun when there's a lot of stuff at stake. But when neither team is really having what we call a premier season, there is a little edge that's not there. First of all, let's all come to the understanding USC does not give you the actual attendance of butts in seats. They're going to say, look, tickets sold.
Right.
I have friends of mine who are in that vicinity of who does the counting, and they'll say, there really wasn't that many people. There's only, they announced 58,000. There was probably 47. And I don't know if I tell you what, it'll be sad to look at if people are watching on TV to not see it full. It should be full, but it won't be full. And remember when everyone's complaining, they're taking it down to 77,500 with the change in the stadium. Gone are the days of 92,000. Well, Pat Hayden didn't do very much for the school, but he must have been Nostradamus to know that they would have a hard time filling 77,500 in this day and age. So I'm going to say the crowd is going to be maybe 65,000.
Yeah, let me tell you what, you put a USC team out there that can play USC football, you'll start to put butts in the stands.
Right.
No question.
Even during the Pete Carroll Halcyon days, the only time the Coliseum truly sold out was for big game atmospheres. Otherwise, it was still, 80,000.
Yeah, but just think what you said. Just think what you said. 80,000. When I was growing up, and I think Kevin will back me on this.
I'm not
even during McKay's great years with his teams, even in the 70s, it never drew 80,000 unless it was Notre Dame or UCLA. The thing about when I compare the Carroll era was, I once laughed when Carroll said, we're going to sell out the Coliseum every week. And when they were at their zenith,
right.
I mean, I remember going to the Cal game when Cal had Aaron Rodgers and Marshawn Lynch.
Oh, that was a great
Coliseum,
game.
the Coliseum was full.
Yeah,
about a half hour before the game. I mean, people were nuts during warm-ups. I mean, it was that intense. And I said, and I think I mentioned this to Kevin a little earlier, I said, you know what? It was so awesome to walk into that Coliseum to see 90,000 people really, really rooting for SC. It was like what you'd expect when you go to see a game at Ohio State or Notre Dame. And
that was another big game atmosphere. I mean, Cal came in highly ranked. USC was number one, number two, whatever they were in the country at the time. But just my point was, USC's really never sold out the Coliseum, even during the great times, unless it was a big game atmosphere. That's the only time the Coliseum really sells out. Go back
You
and
got to
look at
also remember,
Go
though,
back and look
Mark,
at the
that
numbers, Greg. You can
yeah,
yeah,
but the numbers are a little deceptive. If you're talking about the peristyle end at the time, that
I
just
understand.
those seats are so bad. Frankly,
Absolutely.
you need binoculars just to see the end of the end zone.
Understood.
All right, let's move along since we're segueing into attendance for now. All right, panel, what's going to happen on Saturday at 1 o'clock between SC and UCLA? What are your expectations, Kevin?
Ooh.
And be honest here, we're all friends.
Well, we're always going to say straightforwardly, look, it's just not going to be pretty. I mean, USC is going to have to play their best game, several orders of magnitude better than they played all season. And with Drake London out, for the season, and the quarterback, call it a controversy, but we've got our quarterbacks sub-optimized right now, to put it mildly. We've got a receiving core offensively that is confused. They're not quite sure. They know what the patterns are and what they're trying to do. They're not fully bought into what it is that they're trying to accomplish. The situational awareness is really poor. Is it 3rd and 4, 3rd and 7? That's a big difference in terms of how you run a route, and yet you don't see it with the players, and the quarterbacks are, they're close but not quite. So we better be able to run the football, and that's not been a hallmark of the team for the most part this year. So offensively, we're gonna have to get some turnovers, short fields, and some timely penalties, of which UCLA is very capable of giving you turnovers and timely penalties. I mean, that is something that they've been troubled with this year, as have we, frankly. I say they're actually slightly worse than we are in terms of turnovers as well as penalties. That said, offensively, it's going to be a bit of a struggle for sure. And UCLA's defense is their weaker part of their team. Their offense is really very, very good. And they're going to run the football. They're going to pull their tackles. They're going to pull their guards. They're going to run misdirection. They've got a true RPO, run pass option threat quarterback who could, if he's able to throw the ball with accuracy, which he can, it's going to be a long day out there. And if they can run the ball, get their first downs and long drives, and then break a chunk play here and there, which they're very capable of doing. They've got some great running backs, Charbonnet in particular. It frankly could be a long day for the Trojans. I guess it's the 8-minute rule here. What's going to happen in the last 4 minutes of the first half, and what's going to happen in the first 4 minutes of the second half. And that'll tell you a lot about how the game is going to go.
All right, Culkin, how's the game going to go?
Yeah, we know UCLA they're going to want to run the ball. We know that USC is going to want to try and stop the run the ball. One is usually successful, the other one is usually not. Unfortunately, UCLA is successful running the ball. No matter how hard USC tries to stop the run this year, they just can't get it done. Whether it's scheme, whether it's the right personnel, whether it's a combination of both, that's what it's going to come down to. I kind of disagree with Kevin, though. I don't think DTR is a capable passer. So when you make him throw the ball, particularly when he's on the move, he's just not accurate. At least, the games that I'm watching. So, there is a chance there, I guess, if, as Bo Calvert put it, the little boys show up to play, which to me was a bizarre statement. But, if USC's defense shows up and stops the run, yeah, it could be one of those high scoring affairs because, neither team is really good on defense. Both teams commit a lot of penalties. Neither team is disciplined. And I don't know if there's going to be a quarterback controversy this weekend because I don't know if Keaton Slovis is going to be healthy enough to play. This might be the Jackson Dart coming out party going forward. Who knows? So I guess I'll be able to answer that question tomorrow after practice, if Keaton's, going or not. Because last week during the bye week, he was pretty much just a spectator. So USC is opening up as a 3-point dog. I don't know if the line's moved yet. And the UCLA players are already disrespecting USC, calling them little boys. So I guess it's the little boys versus the gutties this year.
Okay, well, there's not a whole lot I can add to what you guys are saying. I will say that SC does have an advantage on the field goal situation. I think that Parker Lewis is a devastating kicker. He's proved that. I think he's hit 11 out of 14, something in that range. UCLA has got some real problems with place kicking. I think I put in the obvious, not so obvious for Friday, that their place kicker has missed at least one field goal the last 4 games. And so he's not a for sure type of player. In a game, it's a rivalry game like this. When it gets in the fourth quarter, the field goal could be a big, big situation. I honestly have to say I don't think it's going to get to that. I think UCLA is going to own the line of scrimmage running-wise. I can't even imagine the way SC tackles, how they're going to even be able to deal with Charbonneau, and his backup is very good. And this is right up Chip Kelly's wheelhouse, the running game. I disagree a little bit with Mark on DTR at quarterback. I think DTR is like a lot of quarterbacks that run. He can throw 5 straight bad passes, then come back and hit 5 straight good passes. And I watched him. I think one of the key factors and where SC has really had challenges is covering a tight end. And Greg Dulcich is going to be in the NFL. And that is the one that I could just see a play action to Charbonneau. And all of a sudden, Dulcich is down the seam or what have you, or crossing. He's going to be a handful. The way SC tackles, it's not a comforting feeling. SC does not score. I mean, they just don't get to the end zone very often. And as Kevin pointed out, the 8-minute rule, that first 4 minutes of the second half, third quarter, what have you, for me to try to even fantasize that Graham Harrell's going to do something miraculous that he hasn't done for 3 years, basically, and that's score a touchdown in the third quarter. I don't think the Leopard's going to change its spots at all. I think what you see in both teams is what they are. Granted, it's a rivalry game, quote, anything can happen. But usually when anything can happen means UCLA is doing the upsetting, not USC. So we'll wait to the final segment here to talk about what we think is the scores are going to be. So let's head on here into the fourth quarter. And the fourth quarter, I've switched it around, is really relevant now. We're heading into the middle to the end of November. We're going to find out who the head USC football coach is. I predict within the week after the bowl announcements, one way or the other. I think I read where Scott Schrader, our beloved recruiting guru and staff writer, columnist, what have you, believes that negotiations are already taking place, that they know who the head coach is, and that he thinks that, it's about now just tidying up the contract. He may be right. Maybe he knows something that we all don't know. It's possible with Scotty. But let's take a look here briefly at the candidates that most people are talking about, what happened last weekend. I have them in alphabetical order, and then we can all talk about where we see it. Obviously, Dave Aranda, number 13, Baylor, is now 8-2. They upset number 8, Oklahoma, 27-14. They're going to play at Kansas. Kansas State, I think, is a 1.5 point favorite to beat them. Matt Campbell, Iowa State, it's now 6-4. They lost 41-38 in an incredible 64-yard field goal, whatever it was, at Texas Tech. They're playing at Oklahoma. I'm sure the Sooners are not going to be a happy group when they take the field on Saturday. Luke Fickell is number 5, Cincinnati. They're 10-0. They won 45-28 at South Florida. They're hosting SMU. Then we have the rapidly disintegrating Penn State Nittany Lions of James Franklin. They're now 6-4. I think they've lost 4 out of their last 5 games. They lost to Michigan in Happy Valley, 21-17. They are at home. They're going to be playing mighty Rutgers. And finally, the dark horse candidate that I still put in here because I think this whole process could be addition by subtraction, meaning as top level coaches either don't want to leave where they're at or they decline the invitation to coach at USC, up moves the lower group, the tier 2 group, in other words. So I kept Bill O'Brien in there, number 2, Alabama, 9-1. Bill O'Brien, the offensive coordinator for the Crimson Tide. They beat New Mexico State. I thought it was rather humane of Saban to hold it to 59-3, actually. They're going to host the Razorbacks from Zooey Pig, Arkansas, on Saturday. So based on the results, guys, of this last weekend and as of today, rank for me your 5 candidates. If you don't have 5, that's fine. But tell me all the way to 1 or 1 and 1A. What do you think is happening? Okay. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I don't have 5. I don't need 5. Give me Dave Aranda 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And I don't even care if they lose to Kansas State this Saturday. Doesn't matter. I've seen enough. Especially when you start looking at the analytics. In the last 3 times that Dave Aranda has been involved in a game against Oklahoma, he has held Lincoln Riley's offense to pretty much their lowest totals, point-wise, total yards-wise, rushing yards-wise. So whether that was as a defensive coordinator at LSU or the head coach at Baylor, he's getting the job done. And, the fact that he can come back to SoCal, being from here, I think everything lines up well for him. And it's different than what USC's had. USC, from Pete Carroll, which was great, to Lane Kiffin to Sarkisian, these were very, outgoing, extroverted, rah-rah type of guys. I'm fine with Dave Aranda's personality style, that stoic, my looks will tell you what needs to be done type of thing. And the fact that he actually put the field goal team on the field at the very end of the game, in that Oklahoma game, tells me that he knows he's not coaching against Oklahoma next year. So whether that's he's coaching for USC or somewhere else, I don't know, kind of a little read the tea leaves kind of thing. I just thought it was an interesting move. He didn't have to do that. And his answer was obviously BS as far as tie-breaking, in the Big 12 thing. So I like his personality. And if we don't get him, I'll suffer and take Luke Fickell. I'll take one for the team if we have to suffer and take a Luke Fickell. But yeah, right now it's Dave Aranda, and I'll be disappointed if we have to take anybody else.
Now, just for our we hope you all read wearesc.com and have a chance to read Mark's column. He did say in his column, and I think his recent column, that he was picking Aranda. So it's not like he's not willing to put his neck out on the line, besides on our video here or the podcast. So that's his take. Mark, just a quick question with you. If Fickell or Aranda doesn't become the SC head coach, who would be next in line for you?
Obviously Matt Campbell. I'm starting to get a little concerned, though. Look, I understand where he's located. I get it. But the program's taken a big step backwards this year. And again, I come back to, you've got to be able to beat your in-state rival one time. He hasn't done that yet. Didn't do that again this year. And is he going to be at Iowa State next year? So, James Franklin, he's been off my list for a while now. And I know you're high on Bill O'Brien just because, 9-1. And anybody who seems to come away from Nick Saban tends to do well. I get it. But I'm all in on Dave Aranda right now. And just because, I think he has a chance to put together a really good coaching staff. Even if he brings along his mentor, he can still keep a Dante Williams. There's just a lot of versatility that he can play with, and keep the status quo here, but make enough of a culture change.
Okay, Kevin, interesting to hear your take on who you see either do it 5-1 or your top 2 choices or your third choice. whatever you're comfortable with, Captain.
Sure, no worries. Yeah, it's a 1A, 1B. I'm good with Luke Fickell. I'm good with Dave Aranda, either one. They're fine coaches. They've demonstrated the ability to get a lot of results from teams that they have talent. So let's not kid ourselves. And they're able to recruit in their local markets very well and have produced some outstanding results. And that's impressive. Aranda's resume, it does include a stint at LSU as a defensive coordinator. Did a heck of a job there. Such a good job that we wanted him at USC to be the defensive coordinator, which would have been a great thing. Might not have been as suitable for a head coaching job, or he would already be the head coach, moving from defensive coordinator to interim head coach and then to permanent head coach. I don't think I've heard anybody say that before. So there you go, folks.
Okay.
But things happen the way they happen, and there's always a reason for it. So, and I think getting his head coaching spurs on it in Waco, Texas, and doing a fine job with the Baylor team this season. Last season was not so great, 2-7 or 2-8, whatever it was, 2-7, I think. And oh, by the way, his field goal attempt, there was a reason for that, Mark. You know that. It was the tiebreaker was a legitimate piece of news. And I would tell you that if you're a competitive person, I'd stick it to Oklahoma every chance I would get as well.
I had no problem with the field goal.
You know, I know you don't, but what I'm saying is it doesn't tell me that he's leaving because he's afraid of showing up to Oklahoma because he kicked a field goal with 3 seconds to go or whatever it was. My point is it tells me the exact opposite. He's willing to do whatever he's got to do to win the conference championship. And if he's got to do that, I'll see you next year, Oklahoma. No worries. Bring it on. Other opportunities should 1A and 1B be unavailable. Well, let's talk about Fickell a little bit. Great coach. Puts a team out in the field, high intensity. These are defensive-minded coaches, both Aranda and Fickell, big time. They're going to put a defense on the field that's going to be able to keep a team in a game, which is what we lack. We have lacked it for years. Just makes it so darn difficult to put a winning percentage together when you can't play defense and hold teams the scores down to such a way that it gives your offense a chance. Give them some short fields, give them some turnovers, that kind of thing, right? Fickell's done a great job, and you've seen it week in, week out with Cincinnati and against some of the competition. You know, I wouldn't say they played down. They just, have maybe not been, and the scores don't seem impressive, but when you watch the games, you go, they played a rock solid game. And of course, they did go into South Bend and do something that we haven't done since I can remember, is beat Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's not a great football team this year, but they're good. And playing in South Bend's worth, it's not 7 points. It's probably closer to 14, certainly 13. And they pulled it off. And they just did. It's not that they just won the game and defeated Notre Dame. Is that they beat Notre Dame on the line of scrimmage. So that tells me that's the type of football. It's Ohio State. It's Ohio football. It's the line of scrimmage type game, surrounded by a perimeter excellence. If that doesn't sound like a Pete Carroll team, you weren't paying attention to me. That's how good teams win. And I tell you, that's a Nick Saban team as well. You win the line of scrimmage and you surround it with the perimeter skill players that are just outstanding. And then you put young men in positions to be successful. So these are 1A and 1B are great coaches. Bill O'Brien, I wouldn't apologize for a moment if he ends up being the head coach. I'm good on that, right? He doesn't have a lot of head coaching experience, but that's okay. He does have some. He's got some NFL experiences as well. He does fall off, if you will, pardon the pun, the Nick Saban coaching tree. Not a bad tree to fall off of, right? And has again, a defensive mindset and a line of scrimmage mindset, which I love. Okay. So I'm good on that. With regards to Franklin, I think we're all have the same kind of mindset that Franklin is just he's a mixed bag. He's done well at Penn State, but not able to get over that excellence hump, if you will. And his game day coaching, we all, being USC folks, we question his game day suitability given what he did at the Rose Bowl. Prime time. Still the most watched game when you get around to that time of year, right? Is the Rose Bowl, and I was like, dude, what are you doing? You're mangling the clock. Usually we do that, and then you call some plays that are just like, chuck it downfield a couple times to the same guy and let's see what happens. Drop one interception. Well, we got the second one. It's just like, what are you thinking? So those are the kinds of mistakes you kind of go, that it doesn't sit right. I'll tell you this: he's a great recruiter, and he's done a great job taking what could have been a disastrous situation at Penn State and got that turned around. So good news on that. I know there's a little bit of potential skeletons in the closet at Vanderbilt. Who knows, right? It's in the past. I don't know if there's anything, that's left undone from that situation. We talked about Bill O'Brien. So, those are some suitable, great guys. I'd point out maybe Mel Tucker, Michigan State's a guy he doesn't unpack his bags very often, apparently, but he is a darn good coach. So I will say this, though, that he didn't get to Michigan State and find the cupboard bare. There was a lot of talent there. But he's been able to tune them up, and they played some really darn good football. And as a result, have done a really fine job winning some big games and playing tough football, and football where they don't give it up in the fourth quarter. They're still playing hard. The heads aren't down. They're not, woe is me. What are we going to do? We're behind. Oh my, oh my, oh my, clutch your pearl. Let's go out and have at it. Let's get it done. And they've done a pretty good job with that. And that is leadership that drives that kind of intensity. And that's what this school needs in our I will tell you something. I think people say, look, there's a lot of competition for head coaches now. There's going to be a ton of them. Pac-12, we got LSU. There'll be others. There'll be a bunch of others. Okay. The best job by far available right now easily is the USC job. And I've heard a lot of different thoughts and opinions on that vary, most into the negative, by the way. That's not the best job. I don't know. Let me tell you what. USC's DNA is to win national championships, win football games. The ability to recruit in Southern California is a big deal, but USC has the ability to recruit outside the state, as well as, protect the home turf and bring in the offensive linemen that are going to Oregon and UCLA and occasionally somewhere else. The quarterbacks are going to Ohio State, Alabama, big time schools should be coming to USC. The linemen should be coming to USC. We've got to win the line of scrimmage battle, and it starts with a lot of things, including recruiting and also having a very vigorous portal presence. If you're a young man and you have an opportunity to play college football and you can decide and choose where you want to go play through the portal, I'm at USC. It almost doesn't matter who the head coach is. It's going to be somebody good. It has to be. This is just too good an opportunity. Someone's going to make a lot of money, come into a great situation, and have an opportunity to be in the Pac-12 championship, as I point out, be the tallest pygmy in the rainforest. I don't care. It's our rainforest. You're still a Power 5 conference. Go for it. That puts us, if you're undefeated and you're whipping your way through the Pac-12 and you take care of Notre Dame and maybe one other out-of-conference game that might be somebody stout like a BYU, that's actually a good schedule, then you have a really great opportunity to be in the CFP. So other than that, I have no opinion.
Well, I will try to limit my opinion. I've stated it pretty succinctly for those of you that do read wearesc.com, and I hope you do. I came out and endorsed Dave Aranda. Brady McCullough of the Times said, don't pick Aranda because he beat Oklahoma. Pick him because he's the best fit. And I will say my response to that is he is the best fit. All Oklahoma did was alert you to the fact that he can play with the big boys. He has a mindset. It was a great way to introduce yourself to Dave Aranda to see how he performs. I think at the end, my personal opinion was he gave a perfectly legitimate, since I've coached, reason why he went for that field goal When you're trying to win and you have that big time winning mentality, you want to cover all your bases. And he did cover it, because if it just so happens that that is the reason why they advanced to wherever they're advancing to in the Big 12 conference, people are going to go, well, that wasn't such a bad idea. Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh didn't exactly get along at the end there. That what's your deal?
Yeah.
Which was probably more legitimate than what Aranda did. But let me just address Aranda briefly, because I can't enhance a lot of what both of you have said. But, when you talk about best fit, which one of these guys, and I'm going to break it down to Fickle. I think he'd be a great coach. I just don't know how long he would stay here. Some could argue, well, if he's here for 4 years, I'll take him for 4 years. Let's just get things back ready. But I don't guess he wants to go through this process again every 4 years. It shows instability. I think that if Aranda comes, he'll be here for 7, 8, 9 years. He used to come to the games as in his 20s to watch Pete Carroll's teams play. He gets it. He understands it. He went to Redlands High School. He went to local, Lutheran? Cal Lutheran. Yeah. He's been surrounded by it. And he was a linebacker in high school. His girlfriend became his wife. She's a cheerleader. I mean, you talk about somebody who, if he doesn't know the roots of USC football in the area, I'll tell you what, nobody's going to do it in this time period. I think it gets down to the mere fact that Aranda has lived in Baton Rouge. He knows what it's like to live there. His kids know what it's like to live there. But let's face it, Southern California is where Aranda's parents live, where his wife's parents live. If he was willing to come as a defensive coordinator, he's certainly going to feel comfort zone coming back again. I could just imagine him after the Oklahoma game going home. Everything's settled down. He's gotten all the phone calls out of his way, and his wife says to him, "Honey, if the SC job opened up, would you be interested?" And my response would probably be, he would probably look at her and just smile. Okay. And I don't take that smile as one that says, "Sure, I would, honey, just for you." I think he has a legitimate reason for coming back. I think the one issue to me is, yes, he'll get paid the big bucks. I don't care what LSU is, if they give him half the state, the Louisiana Purchase, it doesn't make any difference. The biggest thing that he's got going for him is that he's going to get enough money that he doesn't have to worry about, do I have enough money? That money, what he's going to worry about is, I want to know if there's money to give my assistant coaches. I want to know, are they going to be well paid? Show me that you're going to support the program, which will lead to the other question is, tell me that you're going to support me from Carol Folt on down. He just needs to be reassured. This window of opportunity to coach at USC, if Mike Bone and Brandon Susna deem him as the man, is going to be one time only for Aranda. It will close. He will never have a chance to come back to USC the way it is right now to do what he wants, because once that window closes, maybe the next guy is Fickle. Maybe the next guy is the next real deal and is here for 10 years. They'll never get back to Southern California unless UCLA opens up, and I sure as heck wouldn't want to see him going to UCLA. I can tell you that. But I think when it's all said and done, I still believe that Aranda's wife and his family will take him back to Southern California. He knows what's there. For the same reason, I think that Fickle's wife will say, "Honey, you're doing so good." I think if Cincinnati goes to the playoffs, he's not taking the job. That would be ridiculous to hire a coach in January or whatever. Even if they made the championship game, what's the championship game? The 12th of January or something? But I guess anything is possible. So we're going to leave it at that. It sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement that if Aranda was offered the job, he would get thumbs up from the three of us. So last but not least, and we'll zip right through this, our overtime, we're going to predict the conference games. Friday night, Arizona's at Washington State, 6 p.m. Pac-12 Network. Washington State is favored by 15. All right, what do you say, Mark?
Yes, they're going to cover.
All right, Kev.
Arizona's playing well, but Washington State they're at home. Yeah, they'll be fine.
Yeah, Washington State. I don't know if they're going to cover though, because it's a wreck up there with their coaching staff being dismissed as many as have been. That's tough, but nonetheless, I think they have just way too much for Arizona.
I think if Deloria is on fire or plays relative to his capabilities, I think it's going to be Washington State. All right, Saturday, November 20th, we got a host of games here. UW with Gregory as the interim head coach now. Aren't we getting used to that title? Is at Colorado. That's a 12 p.m. game on the Pac-12 networks. UW is favored by 5.5 points. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, actually, I like Colorado on this one. Home game, they played some decent football. They just have to put two halves together, and they should be okay. They came within a whisker of beating A&M earlier this season. Obviously, A&M had their starting quarterback went down, and Colorado really should have won that game. So they have some stuff going on there. I wouldn't be surprised to see them win.
Would you be surprised, Mark?
If UW won, yeah, I'd be surprised. Yeah, I think Seattle is the only place that's having a bigger dumpster fire than LA right now. And they just, like you said, they just got rid of Lake. Gregory might be a really good defensive coordinator, but that's not going to fix their offensive problem. And Colorado, I think, is going to score enough at home. They'll win.
It's a tough game to call, really. I'm going to go with Washington because I like Gregory. I like what he did. I'm not sold at Colorado, although they'll play hard in Boulder. I think that Washington's freed up from the issues of Lake, and that Gregory will get things at least presentable when they go to Boulder. So I'm going to go with the odds. I think Washington's going to win. That's just my opinion. Now the big game, Cal at Stanford, 4 p.m. Pac-12 network. Cal by 4 points. Okay, Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, sure. I'll take Cal. I know Stanford is really messed up right now, and Cal had a bye week to prepare. So, sure. I got nothing to offer on this game.
Kevin, what do you have to offer?
Yeah, I'll take Stanford just because. Why
not? I would like to think Stanford isn't as bad as they are, but I think they're bad as they are. They do get up for the big game. It is a big game in that area. It depends what Garbers does at quarterback. I don't have a lot of confidence in Stanford's defense. They have some great players in certain positions, but if Garbers is allowed to pass the ball downfield and do what they do, I'm going to go with Cal, even though I should. Part of me says don't do that, but I'm going to go with Cal. ASU at Oregon State, interesting game, 7:30 p.m. ESPN. ASU's favored by 2.5 points. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm going to take an Oregon State. What I saw from ASU was unimpressive. That was a team that didn't seem like they were super interested in beating USC. Kind of nice to do, and we of course obliged because we had pretty much the same attitude, which is mind-boggling to me. But whatever. So yeah, I will. I'll lean into Oregon State on that one.
All right, what do you say, Mark?
Yeah, I'm on Team Beaver also.
All right, get out the chainsaw. I'm with the Beavers too. By the way, the chainsaw is what Oregon State does at Research Stadium on third down. SC, they do what the gong at Research Stadium. They fire up this very loud and annoying powered. So yeah, and but it works. It works for them. So I'm going to take Oregon State as well. All right, here is really the big game. With all due respect to the crosstown rivalry down here, Oregon at Utah, 4:30 ABC National. Utah by 3 points. What do you think, Mr. Culkin?
Yeah, I think this is Oregon's comeuppance, finally. I'm going to take, because it's in Utah, and, you guys, I know, Greg, you particularly have been writing there, the whole Utah riding the emotion of 22, yada, yada, yada. This might be their year, Yeah, I think this is the time where Oregon finally, people see who they really are this year. Yeah, people will really see who they are this year.
What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, some of this is going to depend on injuries, and I just didn't get a real accurate injury report for either team. But I like Utah at home. I think Oregon is going to play it tough. Game should be close. If Oregon's defense, Thibodeau in particular, but the rest of the guys as well, play up to their potential, they'll really they'll make it very difficult for the Utah quarterback. But that said, I still think Utah is going to pull this one out. They have very good special teams.
I think that Utah is going to win the game. I think they have karma going for them, but that's not the reason why they're going to win the game. If you've been to Utah, believe me, that is not an easy place to play. Their fans can be just as nuts as Autzen Stadium. They've enclosed it even bigger. It's even a bigger stadium with the side that used to run by the street. They've enclosed it. I think the only thing is the Utah defensive line is not quite what it's been. I think that Oregon's offensive line is rounding into shape.
Yeah.
But I think that Utah's running backs are really underrated, if there is such a thing when you watch them. I'm PJ Flinger. He was at Oklahoma, and he's a home run hitter waiting to happen. And I could see this one being a tough one in the fourth quarter, but I, too, am going to go with Utah. And it's going to just completely torpedo Oregon's season. They will absolutely be on suicide watch in Eugene.
Well, they'll get a chance to play Utah again then in the conference championship.
They'll meet again in the Pac-12. You're absolutely correct.
Right.
They'll meet it. Who knows? Maybe Phil Knight will come up with a revenge shoe for his team to play in Las Vegas. Who the heck knows? Okay, the last one here, we kind of touched on it, but let's get it official. UCLA at USC, 1 p.m. on Fox. UCLA by 3 points. All right, we'll go with El Capitan. Kevin, what's your call on this?
Yeah, UCLA will score more points.
Rout or close game?
No, it's going to be over 15.
Okay. Mark, I know you bleed Cardinal and gold as well as anybody. What's your call?
Yeah.
He's hesitating.
Yeah, this one hurts, man. I don't know. Like I said, USC, they need to make Dorian Thompson-Robinson have to throw the ball. And I know Kevin alluded to, Greg Dulcich, absolutely. But if we have the right safety playing the game, who's not, prone to biting on somebody blinking at play action, then that we might be able to cover up that deficiency. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. And Greg, you touched on it. Parker Lewis advantage USC. So even though the Bruins are a 3-point favorite, I'll give USC winning it by a field goal. How's that?
Sounds good. All right, I'm going to take UCLA in double digits. I think UCLA's got more weapons than SC has proven defensively to stop those weapons. They cannot stop Dulcich at tight end. He's the real key to me. They won't stop the running game because those running backs are NFL caliber. At least Charbonneau is, no doubt about that in my mind. They've had nothing but a history of problems with dual threat quarterbacks. I think what could happen is UCLA scores touchdowns, USC kicks field goals. And that is not going to get you to win the game for 4 quarters. I think that in the end, while my heart will be rooting for the Trojans, out of my hair, my brain tells me UCLA's got too many weapons, can outscore SC more easily than SC can outscore UCLA. So I'm taking the Bruins. I hope in the future that isn't going to happen, but that's just how I see it. So anyway, let's wrap this baby up. Reminder that USC does host UCLA this Saturday afternoon in the Coliseum at 1 p.m. Game again televised on Fox. Next Tuesday, we'll review the UCLA game, the latest on the USC coaching search. We'll preview the BYU game, and BYU will be ranked. And we'll speak to all the developing topics pertaining to USC and college football. So until next Tuesday, thank you, panel. Thank you to our On3 technician, Jake Evans. Thank all of you for watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. And until then, fight on, everybody.